Okay, guess what? The Eagles brought in exactly who we've been waiting for, with Ole Miss's Walter Nolen now looking like a very realistic possibility for Howie Roseman to take. Granted, there's some out there who are reporting Abdul Carter is still in play and the Birds could look to trade A.J. Brown. Yet let's be real here. In this video, I'll break down why the A.J. stuff is all fake news and take a look at the other questions around prospects on Philly's radar. Plus, Anthony DiBona joins to provide a Dallas Goedert update, talk tight end options, and offer a surprising prediction for who Howie Roseman takes first. So let's talk about it. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? So it's really no secret that Howie Roseman is just next level when it comes to the draft. However, in case you didn't realize this, Reuben Frank pointed out that the Eagles legend is the only GM in NFL history to draft 4 straight second-round picks that turned out to be Pro Bowlers.
He's like a magical, manipulative wizard.
By the way, if you were curious who those 4 players were to make it 4 straight, we're talking about Miles Sanders in 2019, who eventually made the Pro Bowl in 2022. And then obviously there's Jalen Hurtt in 2020, who was a Pro Bowler in 22 and 23, yet most importantly a Super Bowl winner and MVP. Now, the third guy on the list is Landon Dickerson. He actually made 3 Pro Bowls dating back to 2022. Leaving the 4th player to make the Pro Bowl is Cam Jurgens, having been selected in 2022. I mean, think about how ridiculous that is for a moment. Like, most other GMs would be lucky if their first-round picks turned into those type of caliber players. Although as crazy as that may be, it's likely Howie's streak will be extending soon. Because FYI, but 2023 didn't have a second-round pick, meaning the next second-rounder would be Cooper DeJean from last season. And say what you will about all the other guys I mentioned, but Coop might have started out his career on the best trajectory of them all. Come on, the fact that he graded out as the best slot corner in the entire league in his rookie season and had a pick 6 in the Super Bowl is just absurd. But better than that, the dude is just not satisfied, with him adding to his list of offseason workouts and extracurricular activities as he continues to hone his craft with Ryan Clark. Remember, he's already been putting the work in with Patrick Surtain this spring, so for real, the sky is the limit for Coop. Of course, if you want to get your hands on this signed Cooper DeJean helmet, then all you got to do is like and comment on this video. Because any comment on any video leading up to the draft will get you entered for the giveaway that we have on draft night. By the way, I'll be drawing for the Coop helmet and the signed Jalen Hurts jersey during that stream as well, since the last video was flat out soaring with Go Birds comments. Also, for those curious, no, you do not need to be present to win, or you don't have to be present to win, but it's fun, come hang out during the draft party, but you do need to be subscribed to the channel, so hit the sub button and good luck to you. Now, while you're probably going to require a good bit of luck, NFL draft expert Todd McShay explained why Howie's success is not luck.
What Howie does is different than some of the other organizations that are consistently picking back there in the bottom of the first. He moves around a lot, and he's smart about it. He's not doing it because he's racing up just to get one player. He'll make a slight move forward and a slight move back, and all along, he's kind of like one step ahead in the chess match of acquiring picks, so that when he goes to move up 2, 3, 5 spots or whatever he goes to do, he all of a sudden, he's already for the last, not just this draft, but like last year, he's been working towards getting that draft capital to do so. So I think those are a couple of the reasons why we see that. And I think when you're sitting at 32, if they wind up picking there, or if he makes a small move back and then a small move up, you're going to wind up getting a really good football player, and it's going to be, there's going to be teams moving up for quarterbacks that maybe don't belong in the top 32, right? And so let's take advantage of that, maybe move back or just sit there at 32, and there's going to be a player that should have gone 4, 5, 6 picks before it.
That's it, man. It's the mindset that Howie's talked about. Heck, he's mentioned it multiple times previously, but you can't be afraid to either make a decision that's going to win you the Super Bowl or make a decision that's going to cost you your job. Of course, the way Jeffrey Lurie pays contracts up front and allows for all kinds of moves is a massive reason for all the autonomy as well. Yet despite Howie admitting he's willing to be aggressive in this draft, let's please not get carried away with all these ridiculous rumors about A.J. Brown being traded. I know, it's flat out lunacy at this point, but I bring it up because some people were talking about it with a connection to Abdul Carter, thanks to a WIP take from Joe Giglio suggesting he would trade A.J. Brown if the Penn State star was available, which then led to a poll getting started asking fans for their willingness of trading Swole Batman. And somewhat amazingly, 14% of you guys did lose your minds.
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly.
Look, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but there's so many levels to why that would not make sense. However, before I get there, just in case you hadn't heard the fake news or where it came from, a New England radio station did try to chum the waters.
Well, earlier today, a little birdie with some really good intelligence, a well-sourced phone call came to me to offer this possible scenario. If somebody that we wanted the Patriots to select very badly, Abdul Carter, were to fall to 4th, and I know this scenario is slightly unlikely, if he were to fall at 4th overall, how would you feel about a certain team that recently won the Super Bowl calling up your New England Patriots in desperation and want of Abdul Carter and offering a certain wide receiver who has admitted that he loves New England and would love to play for the Patriots, and possibly more selections in a blockbuster draft day trade? That's right. I got a call earlier today saying that the Philadelphia Eagles really, really, really want Abdul Carter, and that they would consider, or rather are planning, to call your New England Patriots on draft day if Carter falls to 4 to see if Mike Vrabel would like a reunion with A.J. Brown and possibly more draft selections and compensation to come. So there you go, folks. There is your latest pick number 4 rumor. It is a good one, and I thought that I would chum the waters today for the pick number 4 dialogue. A.J. Brown and more compensation possibly to the Patriots if Abdul Carter falls to 4.
All right, I don't deny the fact that, sure, Philly would probably love to have Abdul Carter, but they also love having A.J. Brown. Plus, just a very quick Google and research on even a potential trade would help you realize that there's something like a $60 million dead cap hit in 2025 for AJ, and then also nearly a $90 million dead cap in his entire contract if he were traded. Like, let's get one thing straight. You're not trading away AJ Brown anyway, regardless of the contract. Yet I did still want to at least share for the record that it does not make any financial sense at all. Of course, I get it. The radio station's got to have something to talk about, so obviously they're going to throw out rumors involving AJ since he loves the Patriots. And maybe I should be used to this by now, but honestly, the sheer ignorance to just throw this out there and hope it sticks is muddying the waters at the very least. Which, speaking of, I want to talk to you guys about the sponsor of today's video, Mudwater. Look, for anyone who's been following this channel, you know good and well that I am not a morning person. And yeah, the late night streams probably don't necessarily help. But I also never found the right morning ritual to get me going. That is, until I started trying Mudwater. Because Mudwater is able to give me better energy without the crash, along with a fraction of the caffeine in a cup of coffee. Which is, of course, thanks to their USDA certified and Whole30 approved clean ingredients. Featuring things like cacao, cinnamon, Himalayan pink salt, lion's mane, and turmeric, to name a few. Now, I gotta be honest, I definitely doubted it at first, but after trying it, I've certainly noticed a boost in my focus lately. Plus, my wife would attest to it as well, and she really enjoys the matcha after an afternoon workout to get a boost of energy without the jitters, crash, or dependency of an energy drink. And the best part is she's able to drink it mid-afternoon and still sleep. Seriously, whether you're looking for a new morning ritual or a clean option for a pick-me-up in the afternoon, you gotta try Mudwater. So go ahead, upgrade your morning ritual and try Mudwater. Just click the link in the description or scan the QR code and then use the exclusive code Josh Davis to get 15% off your starter kit and a free frother. Alright, while this whole AJ thing is not going to happen, the Eagles drafting Ole Miss standout defensive lineman Walter Nolen is starting to look more and more likely, with reports suggesting that the pick is gaining more steam and Inside the Birds revealing that Philly did in fact bring the 21-year-old in for a top 30 visit.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening!
I'm telling you, that was the one that I was waiting for. Because at 6'4", 296 pounds, and one of the best productive scorers in the class, I can't think of a better guy to pair with him than Jalen Carter. Of course, I get it. There's some concern about if he'll pan out, and some scouts have labeled him as a boom or bust potential. Yet remember, this is kind of the similar situation to how things played out with Jalen Carter before the draft. So I'm telling you, get him into Philly, bought into the Eagles' way, and we're golden. For real, there's a reason multiple analysts admitted nobody questions how talented he is and how hard he plays. So who better to get the most out of him than the godfather of the defense, Vic Fangio, and D-line coach Clint Hurtt? Look again, I'm all for it. It's not a surprise. I've talked about him a million times, but hearing that it's an official top 30 visit, that makes it that much better. And given the latest news there, along with the latest top 30 visit updates and other news around the birds, I had Eagles writer Anthony DiBona hop on to offer his thoughts on the decisions facing Howie Roseman.
Top 30 visits, been top of mind for quite a while, but a few updates since the last time that we spoke and recorded here. So run us through those other potential guys or visits as of late.
So there's been a couple reports lately, thanks to players either posting on social media or from Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer. And then another report from Adam Kaplan, that's kind of the big one of here. But starting off, Navy safety Rayon Lane III was reported by Jeff McClain, but he mentioned that it was probably a local visit. So that's not too notable, more of like a day 3, maybe undrafted free agent target for the Eagles. LaQuint Allen, running back from Syracuse, who kind of compares similarly to Jadon Blue in terms of how he's kind of more of a receiving running back in that aspect. So that's kind of interesting to look for, but also likely qualifies as a local visit as well. And then Justin Wally, cornerback from Minnesota, another kind of late day 3, potentially undrafted target for the Eagles. Once again, another player in the secondary that they're looking for. A lot of versatile players that they're bringing in that regard. See if they're going to make a couple additions. I would assume between the draft and undrafted free agency, we'll probably see at least 2 or 3 additions to the secondary just for the sake of competition. And then finally, the big one that kind of everybody's been like looking forward to this whole time, but it hasn't happened. But now, less than a week away from the draft, Walter Nolen from Ole Miss has reportedly visited the Eagles, according to Adam Kaplan of Inside the Bird. So that's definitely a notable visit, and feels like Eagles fans have been asking for it for forever, and now it's reportedly happened.
That is absolutely one of the visits that I've been asking for. You've been asking for. We've talked about it a number of times. We do it in the mock draft simulator, and I've been hesitant too whenever we use the simulators because, as you've spelled out in an article, and by the way, people go check it out. Follow Anthony at DiBona NFL. He's got the articles there, post pretty frequently. But the relative athletic score, the top 30 visit. If Eagles have brought you in for a visit, we talked about it a number of times, but an 8 or higher in the relative athletic score, then it's kind of a lock that the Eagles will take you. But you at least need to have the top 30 visit to really be like, oh, hey, they're kind of on their radar. And we hadn't heard the Walter Nolen. We were like, well, they, talked to him at the combine, or, just to some potential interest there. The fit is seemingly obvious, but yeah, like I was very excited whenever you texted me because I was off distracted and I saw your text and was like, hey, look at this. Hang on. Walter Nolen brought him in for a visit. Curious because we have talked about him a number of times, but I mean, in all seriousness, Walter Nolen, if he were to fall to the Eagles, the fit, I mean, it's seamless, right? Like we look at this player and what the Eagles might want.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it for months now, I feel like, as far as linking Walter Nolen to the Eagles. He's drawn comparisons to Jalen Carter. I don't think he's that elite of a prospect in that regard. I mean, he does have a couple of things that he needs to clean up, but just starting with his size, 6'4", 296 pounds, I mean, that's the size that you're looking for at the position. He's an explosive player, strong hands, incredibly fast first step where he's just by blockers before they even know that he went past them. And it's just like, or if they do find out that they passed him, they're holding on. He's drawing a lot of penalties, similar to what we saw Jalen Carter and Milton Williams do a ton last season. So really impressive in that regard. But there are some times where he's almost too aggressive, where he just kind of just goes for it and doesn't really read a play. He'll kind of go a little bit too fast for his own good and kind of take himself out of a play before it really needs to happen. So that's the only thing he would really need to clean up. But I mean, if you think about him landing in Philadelphia along these other guys that are there, being coached by Clint Hurtt, obviously Vic Fangio as well, it feels like a perfect situation where he'd be able to clean up those little issues that he does have and really maximize his potential.
I'm just going to put this out there right now, and I probably said it in other recordings, but I'll just put it out there again because we are very close. But Walter Nolen is the pick that I want. I don't know if it's necessarily going to happen, but Walter Nolen is the pick that I want. You wait till 24, 25, maybe you trade up, you go get Walter Nolen. Now, if that were to happen, we just have to say this, though. He's going to have to fall a little bit further than talent-wise. Like, if we just go sheer talent, he probably gets drafted earlier. But there have been a few speculations, rumors perhaps, of potentials for character issues or concerns. What have you looked at it, kind of researched or dug into a little bit deeper, but anything there as far as some character issues and just taking a look at Walter Nolen?
Well, it's interesting because there are a few prospects in this draft where there's either been like legal accusations against them or other questionable kind of red flags off the field, where with Walter Nolen, I haven't really seen any of that. The biggest knock on him is that dating back to high school, he did go to 6 different schools in the last 7 years. So a lot of people are like, why did that happen? Why does he keep leaving these schools? What's going on? But Dane Brugler of The Athletic, he releases The Beast every year, which is essentially the best draft guide that you can get. I definitely recommend anybody give it a read, but he usually has any kind of issues for players off the field. He'll usually have those covered in his draft guide. And for Walter Nolen, he didn't really have anything besides the issues with going to different schools. And he dug even deeper and with the reasoning for each of those moves. And 2 of those transfers were due to one in high school and one at Texas A&M, where his former head coach was let go. So he eventually left the school because of that. And that's essentially the guy that he went to the school for. And now obviously that person left. So he transferred. And then one of the other things was he left his initial high school to go to IMG Academy, which is a move that you see a lot for high school basketball players and football players. But then unfortunately, the COVID-19, the pandemic hit, and his mother wanted him closer to home. So he transferred back to a school closer to home. So I mean, a lot of those things I feel like are justified in my opinion. I feel like, especially being a parent, I would want my kid closer to home in that situation. But I mean, is it a little bit of a question? I guess so, but that's why teams are able to interview these players. And obviously the Eagles brought him in to kind of find out his answers for these things.
And it speaks for itself too. We've just said this before, but for others that are like, okay, hey, Jalen Carter, the reasonings for him falling, right? He should not have been there, available at 9, fell for a certain reason. So is it questionable concern? But if the Eagles, and it's a big if, but if the Eagles were to select Walter Nolen, if it's a trade up or he just somehow falls to them at 32 and they're like, hey, great, we got our guy. I don't think that's happening. You probably have to trade up for him. But if they did take Walter Nolen, I have no concerns at all because we talked about this a million different ways and analyzed it in a million different ways. But the Eagles do their due diligence. That's why they bring them in for a visit, like you mentioned. But I am curious, though, is it odd to you at all? Is there anything about this that I don't know we can take away from it, of the fact that it seems like it's so tight-lipped, like it waited till the last second, and then Walter Nolen, it just feels like a bigger prospect like that. It would have been released a little bit earlier than this because, we're talking about a couple days past whenever the last day they could have brought them in, and we didn't hear it the 16th, whenever that was the last day. So I don't know. I'm assuming it was much earlier in this process. I have no clue, but any significance to the Eagles keeping it under wraps for a bit?
I don't know if it's really, in this situation, if it's significant that it was kind of tight-lipped, because it just seemed like everybody kind of assumed that the Eagles would bring him in, right? It felt like such an Eagles pick. So the fact that it didn't come out, I guess, was a little bit concerning. But it also feels like everybody was already assuming that, like, Walter Nolen, James Pierce Jr., like Mike Green, maybe, like, these guys feel like guys that would eventually fall to the Eagles, and just everybody else would be like, how did they fall to Philadelphia? And it felt like the Eagles were, like they always do with Dom DeSandro, doing all the work that he does, looking into these players and taking through all their files and everything like that. Like, it would have surprised me more if this didn't come out, honestly. And I don't think it's too much of a big deal that it came out so late, because looking back to last year ahead of the draft, where Quinyon Mitchell's visit to the team kind of was a later one that was reported kind of close to the draft as well. So maybe it's a sign that he's going to be their first round pick. Who knows? They might have to make a jump, like you said. But anytime they bring a player in for a visit, like I've said for years now, it's very notable and worth watching during the event.
You're getting me hyped up, sir. You're saying there's a chance. You're telling me there's a chance for Walter Nolen. I'm going to put you on the spot here. What is the area that you think they would have to trade up? Like how far do you feel, like gut feeling, that Walter Nolen might fall to where Eagles say, okay, now we have to go trade. Now we have to go get him?
I've always looked at that spot with the Vikings at 24, because not only does it seem like the perfect spot to kind of leap ahead of all these other elite teams that might be hoping one of these great prospects like a Malachi Starks or Walter Nolen kind of falls to them, but you have to look at what the other team's going to be looking for. And I believe the Vikings only have 4 or 5 picks in this year's draft. So if they're looking to add more draft capital, it feels like the perfect opportunity for them to kind of just drop back 7 or 8 spots to the Eagles and then add maybe a day 2 pick or a couple day 3 picks or a pick in 2026, however they want to do it. I feel like the Eagles have the ammunition to kind of move up, and I feel like 24 would likely be that best range for them to really secure that spot. Obviously, if those players get taken in the teens, then they're out of luck. But if they start to fall, it feels like 24 is that perfect spot to jump into.
Okay, I like it. Keep an eye out for 24. We're going to be monitoring very closely. Everyone's obviously extremely excited because we're getting so close to the draft night. But it's all the speculations, hypotheticals. Who do the Eagles take? We've talked about this also, the fact that there's been not any Eagles visits for top 30 visits announced. We did get the Walter Nolen one here, but still no tight ends. Now, they did talk to some guys at the Combine, but I don't know. Feels like, based on recent reports or media interviews and things like that, that there is interest, even if they're not bringing in top 30 visits, right?
Yeah, so dating back to the Combine, it feels like that's where most of their interest was, where they definitely had a formal meeting with both Gunnar Helm and Mason Taylor, who are regarded as maybe in the top 5 to 10 range. Definitely top 5 for Mason Taylor. Gunnar Helm's a little bit more sporadic as far as his rankings go, but he is regarded as one of the higher tight ends in the draft. And then they also showed interest in Thomas Fidone from Nebraska and Terrence Ferguson from Oregon, who are also in that same cluster as Gunnar Helm, where all these guys are pretty much considered in that top 10 range as far as tight ends in the draft. And then, so they definitely met with all those guys at the Combine. But then you have a guy like Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green, who has a connection to Scott Loeffler, who's now the quarterback coach for the Eagles. No reported interactions for that. I mean, they were in attendance at Bowling Green's pro day. I shared that picture of one of their scouts watching Harold Fannin Jr. during the receiving drill, like the on-field workouts. So the Eagles were definitely there for that, but no reported meetings as far as at the combine or visits to Philadelphia. So they have been showing interest in tight ends. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. It's just nothing that we've seen reported as far as them actually visiting Philadelphia.
Okay, gotcha. Well, there's a couple guys, and you mentioned them, of course, but a couple guys of, Mason Taylor. That's the one you've been talking about for forever. And maybe it's your fault. Maybe it's your fault for why he's gotten so much hype, because it's like now this dude is literally being very realistic possibility that he's a first-round pick potentially. I mean, you hear Daniel Jeremiah mentioning it. Brian Baldinger, I believe, was also talking about it. So he's certainly gotten a lot more hype there. Do you feel like the Eagles potentially, I mean, would it be strange for them to trade up or even like take Mason Taylor at 32?
I mean, I personally, at this point, it seems like, I think I mentioned it the last time we were live streaming, that the Mason Taylor hype's gone a little bit out of hand, like almost too much for me, in my opinion. And I was driving the bandwagon just a month or two ago, where I was sharing like his background and like how well he played, how little drops he had, who his father is, who his uncle is, like all this stuff. I was kind of like hyping him up, and now it's just like I was able to grab him in the third or fourth round in mock drafts at that point. And now you see, like you said, you have multiple analysts that have him in the top 32. I think Daniel Jeremiah had him at 32, and whenever that happens, people are like, oh, he has ties to the Eagles. The Eagles pick at 32. Something, Brian Windhorst. Something's going on here. That means.
Yes, you sent me some of those.
And now Dane Brugler, I think, has him at 31 overall in his rankings as well. So those are two of the more prestigious draft analysts like that cover the NFL draft, and they both have him essentially in their first round. So now there's talks that maybe the Eagles even have to trade up a little bit to get him. So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, obviously, I think he's a fantastic player. I just didn't think he was going to receive first round pick hype, but maybe you're right. Maybe it is all my fault.
We'll blame you if they have to trade extra to give up, and try to get Mason Taylor. But if they trade, let's just say this, if they trade Dallas Goedert, then we're certainly a lot more behind that, because you got to get a tight end. So, you pick someone out a little bit earlier. It does feel even more, and I know that people may be like, man, I'm tired of talking about Dallas Goedert. It's every single week. It's just more speculation and rumor and all this. But that's all you have to go off of so far. But it does feel like, we have to admit, it does feel like there's a building kind of snowball effect of sorts of like Dallas Goedert. It's really, he's going to get traded probably at some point. It's not a question of if, but when. And you had Jordan Schultz that came out with another report recently of saying like, Eagles want 2025 picks, but if they can't get that, they're willing to take 2026 draft capital. So, we ran through a mock draft that we did with the Colts even, Dallas Goedert for 117. So we've seen a number of different scenarios of what you potentially could do out there. If they trade Dallas Goedert, then, maybe a Mason Taylor option, but also Harold Fannin, your guy, someone that you've been high on. Is that a potential that you see for the Eagles? And, I guess how much further back do you think you could get him in terms of, or I guess compared to a Mason Taylor?
It's funny because, like, if you would have asked me a month or two ago, I would have thought Harold Fannin Jr. would have been getting the late first round hype, whereas Mason Taylor would kind of be maybe a third, fourth round option, where it's kind of the opposite now, where Mason Taylor, like we said, is getting that first round hype, and Harold Fannin Jr. has almost dropped down a little bit in draft boards, where despite the elite production that he had at Bowling Green, I mean, I guess a relatively disappointing performance at the combine has kind of knocked him down draft boards, along with his size and people not really knowing what role or how he's going to be used in the NFL. I still think he's too good of a player, despite being 6'3" or running a 4.7 or whatever people want to bring up. I just feel like on the field, it kind of speaks for itself and the different roles that he can play, especially in today's NFL, where everybody's trying to create mismatches and find things. And he lined up like 38% of the time out wide. He could line up in the slot. He lined up in the backfield, in line. Like, he could really do it all. I'm not saying he's going to be a one-for-one replacement for Dallas Goedert, because I feel like you don't necessarily want to leave him in line blocking a premier edge rusher. Like, that's not the situation you want to be in. But you can kind of create mismatches, especially when you're working with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley in the backfield. Like, these are all things you have to account for already. And now you have Harold Fannin Jr., who can do things after the catch. He can, like I said, line up in a variety of ways. So just the possibilities would be endless with him in Philadelphia. And obviously with Scott Loeffler, they kind of have the inside scoop on him as well.
And worst case scenario, I mean, you could always just play him at safety. So, you got great versatility that you were telling me about before we recorded here.
Yeah, that's another thing about Dane Brugler's the beast for the Athletic is he really dives deep into these prospects, and I wasn't aware, but Harold Fannin Jr. basically played his entire high school career at safety, and it seemed like heading into college he was going to be a safety, but Bowling Green said, "Hey, look, we view you as a tight end." He did play wide receiver in high school, but Bowling Green was like, "Hey, we view you as a tight end." So 2021 or 2022 was his first time actually playing tight end, and now here he is, 2-3 years later, going to be drafted maybe third round, fourth round as a tight end to the NFL. It's quite a story.
Go figure. It reminds you of someone else on the Eagles, right? I mean, you play one position, you move to another one. Could go well.
Jalix Hunt, my guy from he played safety, and then I talked about him. He was one of my guys last year. Obviously,
there we go.
Moved to the edge. The Eagles drafted him, so maybe one of my guys will land in Philadelphia once again.
You're saying there's something about you really like these guys that play safety and then they move on to a different position. So, you could go 2 for 2 if they draft, and it even could be third round. What would the odds of that? If they take a third round player and both of them were former safeties moved into a different position. So another, just, keep an eye out.
Listen, if that happens, my wife always asks me to play lottery and then buy lottery tickets, and I never do because I think it's a waste of money. But if that happens,
just once,
buy a lottery ticket.
Yes, just one time. I think it would be well worth it. So keep us posted on that one. I was going to ask though, because yes, with Harold Fannin, lots of hype, lots of people I've seen comments. I'm same thing. Envision him in this offense, the versatility, like you mentioned, he can line up in different roles. Any questions for some character concerns or issues? I know that there's been some things out there for interviews of potentials anyway thrown out there.
So I wasn't aware of any issues with Harold Fannin Jr. until I was watching Brian Baldinger on Anthony Gargano's show for PHLY, and he kind of mentioned something very interesting because first he was praising Mason Taylor, just saying how good he is, how the Eagles might have to trade up to 28 or 29 to land him if they do want him, how perfect of a replacement he would be for Dallas Goedert. And then he was asked about Harold Fannin Jr. and his tone completely changed, where he was like, I don't know, he almost didn't even want to talk about it. And it got kind of a little bit awkward if anybody wants to watch it. But he was pretty much saying how he said if Scott Loeffler is honest with the coaching staff and the scouts, that he doesn't think Harold Fannin Jr. is going to be a fit for Philadelphia. So that made me think what happened. And I looked at the beast, like I said, because usually Dane Brugler really covers all that stuff really in depth. And the only thing that I could find was apparently in his junior year of high school, he had really poor grades that had a couple of schools kind of pull their offers, but it was also during the COVID year. So all the schools started using remote learning and his grades kind of fell off a cliff. But then his senior year, everything bounced back. But by that time, all the schools kind of filled up their recruiting classes already. Bowling Green eventually ended up opening a spot for him, and the rest is history from there. But that I couldn't really find anything else as far as off the field issues or anything like that. So that is a little bit interesting to watch, obviously. And if he does fall in the draft, maybe those questions are a reason why. But I haven't seen anything on my end in that regard.
Okay. Something to keep an eye out for. At least, some good insight and knowledge. And, people can debate whether that is something, whether it's not something. I think you were mentioning it to me as well, but it's look, if the Eagles do have any concern, it's Scott Loeffler. And like Brian Baldinger was saying, if he's honest, but here's the thing is if he gets drafted, then there's not a concern because they would have asked those questions and had it. So we'll see how it turns out. But if there's a potential there, I'm sure that, they've got all the info they potentially could need for something like that. Real quickly, because I mentioned Dallas Goedert talking about tight ends also. Do you feel like there's more of a chance now for a trade for Dallas Goedert, and any idea on, or I guess not more of a chance, but do you have any idea on compensation you might expect, teams potentially interested? I know I mentioned the Colts one that we've done in previous mock drafts and you've done as well, but any other inklings there?
I mean, I feel like for months we've been talking about this Dallas Goedert trade. It just feels like inevitable at this point, kind of like the Hassan Reddick situation last offseason. It's not the same situation because Goedert didn't technically demand a trade, but I mean, the reports have been out there for months now. I mean, once Jordan Schultz's report came out recently, Josina Anderson kind of quote tweeted it saying, because she had a report in March that said the same thing, where it was like, they'll be willing to accept 2026 compensation. It doesn't even have to be 2025. So it's kind of become the worst kept secret in the NFL at this point. So, and then if the Eagles are trying to trade him during the draft and they do take a Mason Taylor in the first round, now they're going to have even less of a chance to negotiate, because now teams know they have to move Dallas Goedert because you just drafted a tight end in the first round. So they're going to have even less kind of power in the negotiations to kind of demand anything. So, I mean, ultimately, I think if they trade him for a compensation in this year's draft, I think they'll probably get a 4th or 5th round pick. But if they're willing to take something in 2026, maybe it'll be like the Hassan Reddick trade where they can get a conditional third round pick or fourth round or conditional fourth round pick that could become a third if he gets this many receptions or this many receiving yards, something like that with incentives involved in terms of the compensation. But that's probably what I'd be looking for as far as Dallas Goedert being traded. But it seems like at this point, I'd be more surprised if he returned than if he was traded.
I would take that, by the way. The trade comp. I mean, I think a lot of us would at this point, especially because of how much talk that people have had about it. It's like, look, just make the move.
Yeah.
Do what you need to, whether it is this year, whether it's next year. I know that Howie's continued to maintain, like, well, the draft is separate. It doesn't have anything to do with this. It's a separate entity. But it is all blended together because we're talking about draft pick compensation for Goddard. So it's cool. Like, play the poker face, the game there. Either way, I trust Howie, and I think everyone does because Howie Roseman, shout out to Reuben Frank for the stat thrown out here earlier on Friday. But Howie Roseman's the first GM in NFL history to have 4 straight Pro Bowlers drafted in the second round, or second round picks that ended up becoming Pro Bowlers. And you mentioned too, it's likely to become 5 because of Cooper DeJean at some point. And with this draft, at 32, do the Eagles trade back? Do they end up having multiple second rounders? The odds, would increase, I would guess, to say there's another Pro Bowl there. But what do you think? Trade back option, second round picks? Are we going to get another one there?
I think we should just have Howie Roseman trade up or trade back where he only has like 4 or 5 second round picks
take all
and just skip
rounders.
Everything else. I mean, you have Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens. So that's who the 4 players were for the streak. 2023, they didn't have a second round pick. And then last year, of course, they got Cooper DeJean, who I'm sure is going to make a Pro Bowl, at least one Pro Bowl throughout his career. So it's just absurd to kind of think of the success that Howie Roseman has had. And I know Adam Schefter had that breaking news, where he said Howie Roseman's going to make a trade or two. Like, that's the most the easiest thing to predict. It's just Howie
We could
Roseman
all say that.
trades. Yeah. So I mean, if I had to guess, I feel like I've been pretty consistent with this for a few weeks now. I think it would be a trade up in the first round more so than a trade back, just because, especially now with the Walter Nolen visit, that only makes me think it even more, because him and Malachi Starks feel like kind of 2 blue chip players at their position that would be foundational players for Philadelphia at positions that they valued, especially in recent years where they added CJ Gardner-Johnson, traded for CJ Gardner-Johnson, let him go, realized how much like a mistake that was, brought him back, now let him go again. So I think they want to add, like, they're focusing more on safety, especially in Vic Fangio's defense. It's a little weird that they haven't added anybody yet, even as like a security blanket, which makes me think they're going to be targeting it early in the draft. So either day 1 or day 2, I think they'll take a safety, but I think moving up in the first round could be something to watch for.
Okay. Maybe a Kevin Winston Jr., Andrew Makuba, a couple other options for safety there. If you don't get Malachi Starks, I know there's lots of Malachi Starks hype and support there, which is understandable. But yeah, I mostly was seeing it trade back, but you're right that the Walter Nolen news is one of those where it's like, if he falls just far enough, because if we're talking about he gets drafted in the teens, I think that's too far of a trade up still from 32 to there. You give up so much to make that move. But, as you were mentioning, the Vikings 24, I would totally be on board with that if they want to make that side. Or, hey, maybe even falls a little bit further. It's a guessing game because no one would have ever predicted Jalen Carter goes to 9, as we were mentioning. But last question here. Final prediction, put you on the spot. The Eagles, whether it's 32, whether it's a trade up, trade back, who are you going with? Probably the last recording that we do before the draft. So who would you go with that the Eagles are going to select for their first pick of the draft, whether it is first round, second round, wherever?
I can't believe I'm saying this, because if it was a month or 2, maybe even 3 months ago, I would never think that I would say this. But with their first pick, whenever the Eagles do make it, they're going to take Mason Taylor, tight end from LSU. I don't know. It just feels like there's too much smoke at this point. I mean, like I said, I think he's a really good player. Not crazy about the pick if that is it, but I just feel like there's too much smoke from very reputable people, as far as like Daniel Jeremiah, Brian Baldninger. Like, these are people that really know what they're talking about when it comes to the Eagles. So when they say things, my ears kind of go up a little bit. So I'm going to go with Mason Taylor. It's a little bit of a surprise, and that's kind of a hint, kind of a sneak preview of my final mock draft that'll be going up Thursday. So a little bit of a teaser, but yeah, it's going to be Mason Taylor.
Okay, I am very interested to check that out too. And if people are, of course, go to follow. Make sure you're already following. You should be following, but at DiBona NFL, post those and share those quite frequently. But yes, going to be checking that one out. That's surprising. I would not have expected you to say that. Mine's probably more of a giveaway because of how hyped I've been from this episode since the Walter Nolen news. I'm going to, and I'll just, this is, bragging here, I guess, a humble brag, not even maybe a humble brag. I've correctly predicted the last 2 years. I predicted Jalen Carter and actually Nolen's, but I predicted both of those. And then Quinell Mitchell. So I have to try to make it 3 for 3, which that probably means I'm not going to get it right. So that might be, people may not want me to say this, but I'm going to say Walter Nolen. I'm going to say he falls far enough and they trade up and get Walter Nolen. So
I love it.
We'll see. That's the official prediction. You have it there.
That's it. That means you can lock it in 100%.
Yeah, 100%. Put money on it. It's going to be, you might as well just burn the money. But that's the pick. That's what I'm going to go with. I am curious, though. Let us know, people in the comments, who's your prediction? Who the Eagles go with? Bookmark it. Come back to the video. See who's right. See who's wrong. Also, let us know other thoughts to this as well. But, Anthony, appreciate you coming on as always. This is a blast. Draft night's going to be crazy. Can't wait.
Can't wait. In the words of Bart Scott, can't wait.
There we go. Appreciate everybody. Make sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, go Birds.